What is our description? Our description is the velocity at a given point, which is defined by a position vector r and a time t. So the question is that in this particular framework, what is the meaning of steady flow? So the meaning is straightforward if you refer to the Eulerian description, that the velocity, and not just velocity, we have to keep in mind that it's not just the velocity that we are looking for. So velocity and the fluid properties. Why fluid properties are so important here is because the velocity will have an implicit dependence on the fluid properties. For example, the velocity will depend on maybe density, viscosity as some of the fundamental fluid properties, and other properties also depending on the complexity of fluid. So velocity and properties, they actually go hand in hand. So velocity and properties at a given location does not change with time. So this is something which means that at a given location, say at this location, if you have a velocity now in terms of not just magnitude but direction, sense, everything, this velocity will remain the same forever, doesn't change. And this kind of description is very important because not that all flows are steady flows, but in reality, whenever there is a description of fluid flow, beyond a critical time, the flow becomes steady. So if fluid is flowing through a pipe and we assume that it is a steady flow, what we all mean is that the flow has become steady after some time, because when you start the flow is always unsteady. So there is a threshold time that it requires before this steadiness comes into play, and normally we call it steady flow when that small time is much shorter as compared to the overall time duration over which the flow occurs. So there are many such flows in engineering, nature, etc., where that initial period of unsteadiness is very short, and therefore we can assume those flows to be steady. And if we call unsteady, of course it is just opposite to steady. I'm not writing it again, but it is quite clear and straightforward that velocity and properties at a given location changes with time. So that we call as unsteady. The next related concept that we will talk about is uniform flow. So why steadiness talks about time, dependence with time, uniform flow talks about dependence with position. And why these two definitions are required, you will see you can develop an insight from the Eulerian description, where position and time are two clear variables that are defining the velocity of flow. So uniform flow, in that way we can define in a manner very much similar to steady flow, that velocity and properties at a given location properties could be any properties. They at a given, now it will be time, so we'll just change it, the previous definition, so we'll make it time. Does not change with position. So that what it means is that, let us say there are 10 points or whatever, 6 points that I have marked in this page. Say, let us say at these 6 points, the velocity is exactly the same. I mean, in hand drawing it may not be exactly like that. So at a given time, say now, if I am drawing the velocity vectors at all the 6 points, say all these 6 points define the velocity field. So field is basically the region of influence where this description is valid. So if you look into this uniformity, what it all means is that at that given time, this uniformity is there. So these definitions are very straightforward, but we will try to develop a bit more insight as compared to the what straightforward description that we have got so far. So the first insight, let us a part of this diagram. So the first important observation is that steady or unsteady flow depends on the choice of the reference plane. So this is something which is not so obvious, because when we give a flow or tag a steady flow, we want to call it a steady flow irrespective of any other consideration. And if we call it unsteady flow, that also we want to give the tag irrespective of any other consideration. But the reality is not like that. So let us consider an example, maybe a practical example. Let us say that there is a bridge like this, and there is a river. So there is a bridge, and there is a observer who is standing on the bridge. Some observer is there, and this observer is observing what is happening in the river. So there is a boat which is moving in the river, and the motion of the boat is such that it is moving at a constant velocity relative to the water. So the boat is moving like this, and so before the boat had arrived here, the water was completely standstill. So the velocity was 0. So it's a stagnant water. Just for the sake of argument, let us say it's a stagnant water. So this observer who is standing on the bridge who is studying this flow. Remember that this is like an Eulerian description. So that means the observer is focusing at some location and seeing what change is taking place. So the observer is not actually tracking the boat. So what is happening is that a given location relative to the observer, there initially the velocity was 0, but the boat comes, and once it comes, it creates some ripples, some disturbance. So the observer clearly sees that his velocity is changing with time. The water is getting disturbed, and after the boat has passed away, after some time, again the water at this marked location has come to a standstill. Now imagine another observer. That observer is sitting on the boat. Similar observer, but sitting on the boat and is focusing attention at a point which is just, it is well defined as a point. It is a point which is a point of contact between the boat and the water. Some identified marked point of contact. And that is where the observer is focusing. So when the boat is moving and the boat is moving at a constant velocity relative to the water. So with respect to this black colored observer, his velocity will not be a function of it. So what it means is that the same water flow to one observer, this observer appeared to be unsteady, but to this observer appeared to be steady. And what is the difference? This observer is a stationary observer. This observer is there in a boat which is moving with a uniform velocity. So this, the perspective from which the observer is studying the flow, that has changed. So that is the so-called reference frame. Keep in mind that reference frame is a more subtle concept than coordinate axis. So coordinate axis is just one of the ways of describing the reference frame. But reference frame is a reference with respect to which the motion is studied. So that reference may or may not be described by a particular coordinate system. The coordinate system comes the next foundation of the concept. So here what has simply happened is that the same unsteady flow is perceived as a steady flow by converting the reference frame from a stationary reference frame to a one that is moving with uniform velocity. So in a very subtle way, through this description of a physical problem, we have achieved one transformation by transforming a stationary reference frame to a reference frame moving with uniform velocity. This, in mathematical physics, is known as Galilean transformation. So Galilean transformation is a transformation which transforms the description of motion from stationary with respect to a stationary reference frame to with respect to a reference frame moving with uniform velocity. And in many cases, that enables the description of the flow also being transformed from unsteady to steady. And there are many advantages associated with it, because if you are analyzing an unsteady flow, you have to consider time also as a variable for solving your problem. But if the same flow can be perceived as a steady flow, then time is eliminated. How time is eliminated? Time is eliminated implicitly. Not that the flow in an absolute sense is independent of time, but you have brought in a dependence of time in the description of the space coordinate. For example, if x was your old space coordinate, say along x, now your new x could be described as your old x minus the velocity of the boat into time t. This is simply a relative position. So in that way, this time is there in the description of space, and that is how the dependence of time could be eliminated, not altogether, but through the description of the space coordinate. So this is the first additional concept that I wanted to talk about. And the second one is the interconnection between the steady, unsteady, uniform and non-uniform. So the first question that we would like to address is that, can a steady flow be non-uniform? This is of course a very simple and straightforward question, but it is always good to pose this question. So can a steady flow be non-uniform? So by steady, what we mean is that the flow at a given location is not changing with time, but it doesn't tell you that from location to location it doesn't change. So it can change very much from location to location. A classical engineering example is the flow through a pipe. So if you consider a cross section in a pipe, and if you draw the velocity profile, you will see that at different points in the cross section, say all the points which maybe I am putting some cross, the velocity is different. So that means it is non-uniform, but whatever is this so-called velocity,
Excuse me, sir, you have been muted actually.
okay. So now can you hear me?
Yes, yes,
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So anybody anybody who is handling this Microsoft Teams platform, be very careful. You are all likely to be muted, but by mistake do not mute me. Then you cannot really listen to what I am saying. So up to which you could listen, you tell. Then I will repeat that again. So could you listen to the first example, that steady but non-uniform flow?
Sir, you were muted only for 10 seconds.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. You can see the screen, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sir.
Now, the next question is, sorry. Next question is, can an unsteady flow be uniform? So uniform flow means the diagram which is there at the bottom of the page. So what you can see here is a description where at all the points that have been considered, the velocity is same. I mean, in very simple English words. Same when, that subtle thing you have to keep in mind. Same at a given time, say t1. Now let us say that at these points, we want to draw the velocity vector at a different time t2. And that velocity vector is like this. Again, same at all those points. I mean, forget about the drawing factor. Just imagine that they are the same. So at time equal to t2, they are again uniform. By the definition of uniform flow, they are all the same at that given time. But if you consider the change from time t1 to time t2, you can see that the velocity has changed over the time. So it is unsteady flow. So that means that unsteady flow can be uniform. So the learning from these two examples is that there is no direct connect between the concepts steady and uniform, and they need to be addressed independently. So with these two points, we have covered the basic types of flow in an Eulerian perspective, and so far we have described the velocity. In terms of kinematic parameters, just next to the velocity comes acceleration. So acceleration of flow. So like most of the concepts that we will discuss in the course, we will start with a school level way of understanding this. Why this is so important is because whenever we study a concept, generally there is a strong disconnect between the way in which we study things at school and the way in which in advanced levels things are presented. And therefore, the conceptual foundation is lost. So in the school classes, how is acceleration presented? In the school classes, acceleration is presented as the time rate of change of velocity. The rate of change of velocity with respect to time, whatever, I mean, very similar type of statement. Now, in school level, nobody will tell you Eulerian and Lagrangian. But in school level, the implicit understanding is that it is a Lagrangian point of view that is being discussed. See, this is where you can develop a maturity in understanding a subject. If you can now mentally revisit what was taught in junior and high school and maybe junior college and try to analyze the gap because of certain difficulties in putting up certain concepts at that level. So when the velocity was defined or when the acceleration was defined as the rate of change of velocity, it was defined by keeping in mind that as if there is a particle and the particle is being tracked and its velocity with respect to time, how it changes, that is being recorded. So this description is nothing but Lagrangian description. Whether you tell it in a formal language or not, that is the reality. Now in fluid mechanics, mostly we are talking about Eulerian description, and therefore, while conceptually that definition of acceleration holds, but mathematically you can apply that only to a Lagrangian particle, but not directly to an Eulerian description. You can still apply to an Eulerian description, but you have to do a mathematical exercise to map that description with the classical Lagrangian definition. And that is why we have to go through an exercise of defining, or rather coming up with an expression for the acceleration of flow. So to describe the acceleration of flow, we'll start with the Eulerian velocity description, because that is what is our basis for the mathematical foundation. So the velocity is a function of position and time. Now, this is a vector equation. We can, or rather vector mapping or a vector function, not an equation actually. So to make it a bit more simple to work with, nothing more than that, without losing any concept, just simple to work with, we will consider the components of velocity v. So normally in all the textbooks of fluid mechanics, there are two styles of, not two, basically three styles of writing the velocity component. So let us think about the Cartesian coordinate axis x, y, z. So you write the components of v as vx, vy, vz, vx, vy, vz, whatever you call. In most of the books, however, it is u, v, and w. Same thing, the velocity components along these three directions. And in books which use the index notation, and we will use that extensively as a part of this course at some later level. So this is u1, u2, u3. So u1, u2, u3 means basically 1 represents the direction x, 2 represents the direction y, and 3 represents this direction. So in a way, it is an index that is describing the direction. But whatever it is, whatever is the notation, there are three different components. For r, that is the position vector. So you have the coordinates, either this or x1, x2, x3. Again, either the index notation or three different alphabets to represent it. So we will use the one for the time being which is most commonly used in books, that is this and this. So we'll just write one of the scalar components u as a function of the 4 variables, this one. So remember, this is the beauty of mathematics. So once we have written this, we can forget whether it is Eulerian, Lagrangian, whatever. In terms of mathematics, it is a function of 4 variables. So a mathematical function which has 4 variables, and we are interested to find out this mathematical function, that is same variable u, but at a new location, x plus delta x, y plus delta y, z plus delta z, and t plus delta t. This is a function of 4 variables. We have a description of the function at certain values of the variables. We want to give a small increment to these variables by this delta symbol and see what is the new value of u for those changed parameters. Just look into it from a mathematical viewpoint first. The proper understanding of the subject will come when you convert the mathematics with the physics, and then only you get a full in-depth conceptual understanding. But we will first have the mathematical description. So how we do it? We normally do it by writing a Taylor series expansion. So normally when we have a Taylor series expansion of a single variable, how we go about it? So Taylor series expansion of a single variable is something. So Taylor series expansion for a single variable let us say a function f, which is a function of a single variable x. So just as a refreshment of your whatever you have learned earlier, so fx plus delta x, you can write fx plus delta x f dash x plus delta x square divided by factorial 2 into f double dash x in this way. So this is the standard way in which we write the function of a single variable in terms of this infinite series, which is the Taylor series of a single variable. Here we'll write the same thing, but Taylor series with 4 variables. That is the only difference. So this ordinary derivative will be replaced by partial derivative. So let us do that. I'm erasing this. So this will be u at x, y, z time. So f plus delta x into, now because there are 4 variables, it will be partial derivative of u with respect to x plus delta y into partial derivative of u with respect to y plus delta z into partial derivative of u with respect to z plus delta t into partial derivative of u with respect to t plus the higher order term. That means the second order derivative, third order derivative. This is an infinite series. So instead of writing all this, this is what, this is a shorthand notation that we will follow. HOT in shorthand, we will mean higher order terms. Higher order terms means terms which contain the orders of the square, cube, etc. of delta x, delta y, and all this. So the next is that now we have the description of the velocity mathematically. So how do you define the acceleration? Now go to the school level concept. See, the school level concept is valid. What is not exactly rigorous at the school level is to put it up in a strong mathematical foundation. So that we will try to do here. So what was the school level concept? The school level concept was acceleration is nothing but the time rate of change of velocity. So this is the, because that is put in a language form. So this is the new velocity. This is the old velocity. So the acceleration along x, if we call, so that will be u new, or you can say u at x plus delta x, y plus delta y. This u new minus u old divided by delta t, because it is a time rate of change, and because you are trying to get the picture of instantaneous acceleration, that is acceleration at a given time, and of course at a given location also, not just at a given time but also at a given location. We have to keep that location factor very much in mind, because it is already a description, and the description itself defines the position at which the description is given. So you are not only going to define a given time, but also a given location at which you are talking about the acceleration. But to define the acceleration, the rate of change that is being calculated is with respect to time, but that instantaneous concept, that is taking the limit as delta t tends to 0. So if that is done, so you subtract the two terms, this one and this one. So you will have the four terms, and so we'll first write the time dependence because it is quite different from the others conceptually, and then the position dependence. So I'm just trying to keep some space for writing the limit. So delta y. Let us erase this. Plus the higher limit. Now let us put the limit at the beginning, and then divide all the terms by delta t. Divide all the terms by delta t. because that is the definition which is there. So the first term is the most straightforward one, because here you can cancel these two delta t, and you can easily cancel because delta t is tending to 0. That means it is not equal to 0. So it is not 0 by 0, or it is not division by 0. So you don't have to really have any special consideration. You can simply cancel. So as a consequence of the first term, you get this. And remember that when you are taking the limit as delta t tends to 0, and perhaps also delta x, delta y, delta z also tending to 0, because you are trying to focus at a point. So at that given point and at that given time, the function will have a unique value, and therefore its derivative will also have a unique value. So in that way, these are all unique values, and these have nothing to do with the limit operation that is being exercised. So the limit operation will be primarily concerning about this. Okay. And that is where you have to apply the physical concepts. What are those physical concepts? What is this delta x by delta t? See how we are anyway measuring acceleration. We have a particle. So physically what we are doing? We have a particle P1 at location P1, which is say x, y, z, time. The particle is moving with the flow. So at a new time, that is t plus delta t, which is our concern here, the particle is not confined to the same position as it was earlier. So the particle will go to a new position P2, which is defined by this x plus delta x, y plus delta y, z plus delta z, and of course this writing is not, but anyway you can follow it, t plus delta. So what it means is that you can perceive this delta x. So I'm just putting it with a different color to show the importance. So this x is now x plus delta x. So what it all means is that this delta x actually, in a physical sense, represents the change in x coordinate of a particle, which may conceptually be tracked to describe the motion. So in that way, this is as good as I'm just giving a subscript P to indicate that it is of the particle. Why it is of the particle and it is so important is because, well, with the mathematical description, it's a function of 4 variables. You don't have to care what it is, but to give it, you have to understand what it is. So physically, you have a particle which you may call a fictitious particle or a fluid particle. It is moving from position P1 to position P2, and in that way, what is happening is there is a change in the respective coordinates of the particle. And physically, that is how you can relate the particle motion with the Eulerian description of acceleration. So see, with this effort, you are trying to create a mapping between Lagrangian and Eulerian description, or a connection between the Lagrangian and Eulerian description. So now, if you imagine this way of writing, why I have gone, or I have preferred to this way of writing, is because this now makes you familiar with the school level understanding of acceleration. So this is nothing but the rate of change of the position of a identified particle. So this, you can say, is the acceleration along x, but of a particle, right?
Sir, velocity.
Velocity along x. I'm sorry. So velocity along x of a particle. So let us call u of the particle, better to say. U of the particle. Now the big question, see, these are very, very important conceptual things. So the big question is that, is the u of the particle same as the u of the flow? Well, there are two important things that will make them converge. Number one, when you are fixing up this delta x, delta y, delta z, delta t, etc., all tending to 0, then these P1 and P2 are almost coincident points, and in that way, this is representative of the velocity of a particle located at P1, not directly velocity of flow at P1. What is the definition of the velocity of flow, or what is the connectivity between the velocity of particle and velocity of flow? Velocity of flow, in very simple terms, is nothing but the velocity of a neutrally buoyant fluid particle at that point. This concept we discussed in the previous lecture. That means a particle which is a conceptual particle, very passive in nature, and just moving with the flow with no net force that is being applied because of the particle. So that kind of particle, if it has a velocity and if it is located at a point, then the velocity of flow is the velocity of that particle itself. So that is a conceptual merger of the Eulerian and the Lagrangian description. So this is the velocity of the particle, but with the understanding that all those implicit assumptions that we are not writing, that it's neutrally buoyant, and we have taken all those limits so that the particle is coincident with the point at which we are measuring the all the variables. So now, with all these subtle things which we do not write in the mathematics, the Lagrangian description of the particle merges with the Eulerian description of the velocity field at that point. Not only that, when you take various limits, the other important thing is that in the higher order term, after you divide by delta t, you will get all the powers of delta t and higher order powers, because when you have higher order terms, so you have square, cube, etc. So when you divide by delta t, all other small parameters will remain, and when you take the limit as delta t tends to 0, this higher order term, that will be 0 in that limit. So finally, what will be your expression for acceleration? And we will stop here by writing that expression in today's class, and we will have more discussion on this in the next class. So I'm just writing this summarily what we have got here. So the first term, so this is u. this will be V, and this will be W. Okay. So this is the expression for acceleration along X. So and the mathematical exercise becomes very simple. If you know the velocity as a function of position and time, you can simply differentiate, find out the derivatives to get it. So I'm trying to pinpoint the difference in approach of learning this in the undergraduate and learning it here. See, in the undergraduate, you may have gone through, and this, this all of you have gone through, but in different ways as your teachers have taught. Some have given some explanation of how this is derived, but may not be a very exhaustive conceptual thing. And in some, I mean, typically in what is presented in the low-level books, this expression is given as a formula, and you just have to solve a problem with this formula. So, in that way, I would say that it is a formula that is definitely the case, but the way in which this formula is conceptualized and developed to bridge the gap between the classical Lagrangian way of understanding mechanics and the Eulerian way of description of fluid flow is the conceptual foundation that all of us should remember. So let us just stop the class here, because you will be having other classes, and so we will continue with this on the next class, that is Monday, and have a more complete physical description of this, and then we will move forward. So if any of you have some one or two quick questions or discussions, you can put up. I have another engagement, but one or two questions is fine, and then we will call it a day and we will discuss on Monday.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Hello, sir. This is Anamika Pandey, first year PhD student. Sir,
Okay.
can you please add me in the MS team, since I have registered late for this course?
MS teams, I do not know. Normally, course registration is linked with the MS teams. If not, just contact either Devi Prasad Panigrahi or Devmallo Roy. They are the two teaching assistants, and they are doing this. But in case it is not successful, just write to me. I will ask them to include it. These logistics they are actually doing. The two teaching assistants for this course.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, then. So we stop here, and we'll continue on Monday.
Hello.